Have you ever heard of the 5 sacred roses that Our Lady of Fatima left as secret signs for her most devoted daughters? I'm not talking about the common roses we see in gardens, but about 5 special virtues that the Blessed Virgin Mary plants in the hearts of women chosen for extraordinary missions in this world. Today I'm going to reveal to you, my dear sister in Mary, what these 5 mystical roses are and how to recognize if you've been chosen to carry them in your soul. Before we begin this sacred journey together, I want you to do something very special with me. Write in the comments where you're watching this video from, so all of us can see how far devotion to Our Lady spreads throughout the world. And if you truly desire to receive Mary's special blessings for your life or for some woman you love, share this video with 5 people right now. This simple act of faith might be the key Our Lady was waiting for to open the doors of the miracle you've been asking for so much in your prayers. In the name of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Queen of Heaven and our beloved Mother, let's begin. My beloved daughter of Mary, whether you're a young woman discovering your faith, a mother fighting every day for your family, a grandmother carrying decades of wisdom, or a woman walking alone but never abandoned, this message reached you because it wasn't a coincidence. Our Lady of Fatima has something very special to tell you today. The first rose that Mary plants in the hearts of her chosen daughters is the rose of supernatural patience. You know that woman who can wait when everyone around her has already given up? Who stays calm when the storm is raging, who smiles serenely while others scream in desperation? That woman carries the first rose of Fatima in her chest. It's not ordinary human patience, it's something that comes from above, a serenity that defies all earthly logic. This patience isn't passivity, my dear. It's an active force that works in silence, like rain that falls gently but manages to pierce through even the hardest stones. The woman who carries the rose of supernatural patience doesn't just stand still waiting for miracles to happen. She works, she plants, she cares, but always with that inexplicable tranquility that comes from knowing that Mary is taking care of everything behind the scenes. She might be facing an illness that has no cure in the eyes of medicine, but you see her preparing lunch while humming a song. She might be dealing with a child who got lost in the world, but she continues setting his plate at the table every night, because she knows that one day he'll come back. She might be going through financial difficulties that seem impossible to solve, but she still finds a way to help someone who needs it more than she does. The second rose that Our Lady plants is the rose of universal maternal intuition. You know, that woman who seems to know people's hearts just by looking at them? Who can sense when someone needs a word of comfort, even if that person is on the other side of town? Who wakes up in the middle of the night with a heavy heart because she knows she needs to pray for someone, even without knowing exactly why? That's the woman who carries the second rose of Fatima. This intuition goes far beyond biological motherhood. It's a spiritual motherhood that extends beyond her own family, reaching neighbors, friends, strangers, and even people who haven't been born yet. The woman with the rose of universal maternal intuition has her heart synchronized with Mary's heart. She feels the world's pain as if it were her own pain, and that's why she becomes a channel of healing and consolation wherever she goes. How many times has this woman called someone exactly when that person most needed to hear a friendly voice? How many times has she prepared extra food without knowing why, and soon after someone hungry appeared at her door? How many times has she saved money for no apparent reason, and days later discovered that someone in the family was in need? This isn't coincidence, my daughter. It's Our Lady working through her, using her hands, her heart, and her sensitivity as divine instruments. The third rose is the rose of silent strength. Here we're talking about that woman who carries mountains on her back, but nobody notices because she doesn't complain, doesn't dramatize, doesn't make a scene. She simply carries. And not only does she carry, but she still finds strength to carry other people's burdens too. She's the woman who works 3 jobs to support her family, but comes home smiling. She's the one who's been caring for her sick father for years, but never talks about being tired. She's the one who lost her husband young, but raises her children with joy, making sure they don't lack anything. This strength doesn't come from muscles or the mind. It comes directly from Mary's heart. It's as if Our Lady lends her own strength to these chosen women, allowing them to perform true miracles in everyday life. They don't need to shout to be heard, they don't need to advertise their sacrifices, they don't need to compete with anyone to prove their worth. Their strength speaks for itself, and those who have spiritual eyes to see immediately recognize Mary's hand operating through them. The fourth rose is the rose of impossible generosity. You know that woman who always has something to give, even when it seems she has nothing? Who multiplies little as if it were much, who turns crumbs into banquets, who works miracles with almost nothing? That woman carries the fourth rose of Fatima in her chest, and that's why she can make her hands become channels of abundance even in scarcity. I'm not talking only about material generosity, although that happens frequently too. I'm talking about a generosity that encompasses time, attention, patience, love, forgiveness, understanding. The woman with the rose of impossible generosity. Can give what she doesn't have because she's connected to the inexhaustible source that is Mary's maternal heart. She might be tired, but still finds energy to listen to her neighbor's problems. She might be sad, but manages to console someone who's crying. She might have a tight budget, but always finds a way to help someone who needs it more. And what's most impressive is that the more she gives, the more she receives back, because Our Lady never lets her generous daughters go without. The fifth and final rose is the rose of unbreakable faith. Here we find the woman who believes when there are no more reasons to believe, who hopes when there are no more reasons to hope, who continues praying when even her own prayers seem to make no sense. It's the faith that removes mountains, that opens seas, that resurrects the dead, that transforms impossibles into possibles. This woman might be in the middle of the biggest storm of her life, but you find her praying the rosary with that serenity of someone who knows that Mary is taking care of everything. She might be facing the greatest injustice, but remains confident that Our Lady will bring justice at the right time. She might be living through the greatest disappointment, but maintains the certainty that everything will fall into place according to Mary's will. Now that you know the 5 sacred roses, I need to tell you a story that will deeply touch your heart and show how Our Lady of Fatima works in mysterious ways in the lives of her devoted daughters. This is the true story of 3 American women who, without knowing each other, were chosen by Mary for an extraordinary mission that changed not only their lives, but an entire community. The first woman was named Maria Elena, a 62-year-old lady who lived in a poor neighborhood in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Maria Elena had been a widow for 15 years and was raising 5 orphaned grandchildren alone, working as a housekeeper in family homes in the city's wealthier neighborhoods. Every day she woke up at 4 in the morning, not to get ready for work, but to pray for a full hour before the image of Our Lady of Fatima that she had inherited from her Mexican mother. In those silent dawns, Maria Elena shed tears that seemed to water not only her own sorrows, but the sorrows of her entire Hispanic community. Maria Elena carried 3 of the 5 roses of Fatima in her chest, the rose of supernatural patience, because she never complained about the difficult life she led, the rose of silent strength, because she supported an entire family on her shoulders without ever breaking down, and the rose of unbreakable faith, because even in the worst storms, her trust in Mary never wavered. She didn't know it, but her morning prayers were being heard in a very special way in heaven. The second woman was Catherine Morrison, a 40-year-old executive who lived in Chicago and seemed to have everything in life: a successful career, luxury apartment, imported car, trips around the world. But Catherine carried an emptiness in her chest that all material possessions couldn't fill. For 8 years she had been trying to get pregnant without success, and the doctors had already given the final diagnosis: it would be impossible. Catherine had lost faith in everything, except for a small medal of Our Lady of Fatima that she had received from her Irish grandmother when she was a child and that she never took off her neck, even though she no longer believed in miracles. One night, after another argument with her husband about adoption, Catherine felt a strange impulse to kneel before her apartment window and pray. It had been more than 10 years since she had truly prayed, but that night the words came from her heart like water from a spring that had been dammed up for a long time. She cried, asked forgiveness for her coldness, and begged Our Lady to show her what the real purpose of her life was, since being a biological mother seemed to be out of her plans. The third woman was Dr. Ayanna Blackhorse, a 25-year-old woman of Navajo origin who had just graduated from medical school and was doing her residency at a public hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. Ayanna came from a family that mixed native traditions with Catholicism, but the harshness of medical school and the terrible things she saw every day at the hospital had deeply shaken her faith. She questioned how a world with so much suffering could be the creation of a loving being, and that's why she had completely distanced herself from religion. But Ayanna had something special that she didn't even recognize herself. She carried the rose of universal maternal intuition and the rose of impossible generosity. Even without believing, she treated each patient as if they were from her own family, stayed beyond her shift to talk with those who were alone, and had an inexplicable ability to comfort people in moments of despair. Her colleagues said she had the gift, but Ayanna attributed everything to medical training and the ancestral healing traditions of her people. What none of the 3 women knew is that their lives were about to cross in an absolutely supernatural way. It all started on a Tuesday in May, when Maria Elena was coming back from work and saw a news report on television about a hailstorm that had destroyed a hospital in Phoenix. Immediately, her universal mother's heart was touched, and she decided she would organize a fundraising campaign in her community to help the victims. Maria Elena didn't have money, didn't have important contacts, didn't have social influence. But she had something much more powerful: the rose of impossible generosity in full activation. She started going door to door in the neighborhood, explaining the situation and asking for any help people could give. In 1 week, she managed to raise $3,000 in cash, dozens of blankets, clothes, basic medicines, and non-perishable foods. The problem was that Maria Elena didn't know how to send all of this to Phoenix. That's when she had an inspiration: look for help on social media. She asked her oldest grandson to create a Facebook profile and post the story of the campaign, with photos of everything they had collected. The post went viral in a completely unexpected way, reaching Chicago, where Catherine was absent-mindedly browsing social media during a work break. When Catherine saw that story, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a deep emotion that made her cry in the middle of the office. There was a woman who had nothing, but was moving mountains to help people she didn't even know. Catherine immediately contacted Maria Elena and offered to pay for the transportation of all the donations to Phoenix. More than that, she decided she would personally deliver everything to the hospital, because she felt she needed to meet that extraordinary woman. Meanwhile, in Phoenix, Ayana was living through the most difficult days of her residency. The hospital where she worked had actually been hit by the storm, and they were treating patients in an improvised structure, with few resources and much difficulty. On that specific Tuesday, Ayana had lost 3 patients in a single day, and her faith in humanity was at the lowest point of her entire life. She was crying alone in the hospital bathroom when a nurse knocked on the door and said that 2 women had arrived with a van loaded with donations. Ayana came out to see what it was about and found Maria Elena and Catherine unloading boxes and boxes of supplies they so desperately needed. But what impressed her most wasn't the donations themselves, but the light that emanated from those 2 women's faces. Maria Elena, with her simple smile and her eyes full of love, hugged Ayana as if she were her own daughter and said, "Mija, Our Lady of Fatima sent me here today because she knew you needed a mother's hug." Ayana broke down crying in that unknown woman's arms, feeling for the first time in years that she wasn't alone in the world. Catherine, in turn, looked around that improvised hospital and understood what the true purpose she had been looking for was. It wasn't to be a biological mother, but to be a mother to a much greater cause. Right there, in front of Maria Elena and Ayana, she made the decision that would change her life forever. She was going to leave her corporate career and use all her savings to create a foundation that would bring humanitarian aid to needy hospitals throughout the United States. The 3 women spent the entire night talking, and it was as if they had known each other for decades. Maria Elena told about her morning prayers and how she always asked Our Lady to use her hands to help whoever needed it. Catherine talked about the emptiness she felt and how she had rediscovered faith through the example of that campaign. Ayana shared her doubts about the existence of divine love in a world full of pain, and how the meeting of the 3 made her believe in miracles again. When the sun rose that Wednesday, the 3 women were kneeling together in a small hospital chapel, praying the rosary and consecrating their lives to Our Lady of Fatima. Each had recognized in the others the sacred roses they carried, understanding that it wasn't a coincidence they had met, but part of a much greater plan that Mary had for them. But the story of these 3 extraordinary women was only the beginning of something much greater that Our Lady of Fatima had planned. In the months that followed the meeting at the Phoenix Hospital, Maria Elena, Catherine, and Ayana discovered that their lives had been intertwined by invisible threads long before that day. And what began as a simple fundraising campaign transformed into a network of miracles that spread throughout the country, touching thousands of lives and proving that when a woman carries the sacred roses of Fatima, she becomes an instrument of divine transformation. The foundation that Catherine created started small, but grew in a way that defied all business logic. She had invested all her savings, about $200,000, hoping to help maybe 2 or 3 needy hospitals in the first year. But what happened was something completely supernatural. Every time the foundation made a donation, new donors appeared offering even larger amounts. Businesspeople who had never shown interest in charity began seeking out Catherine, offering partnerships. Volunteer doctors multiplied like loaves and fishes. In 6 months, the foundation had already helped 15 hospitals in 8 different states, distributed more than $2 million in equipment and supplies, and created a network of more than 300 volunteers spread across the country. Catherine couldn't explain how this was happening, but Maria Elena knew. It was the rose of impossible generosity operating on a national scale, multiplying resources miraculously. Maria Elena, in turn, discovered she had a special gift for mobilizing communities. After the success of the first campaign, she began receiving requests for help from other cities. A mother from Las Vegas asked for help organizing a fundraiser for fire victims. A pastor from Memphis requested guidance for a campaign to help the homeless. A teacher from Seattle wanted to learn how to mobilize parents to renovate a school in precarious conditions. Maria Elena created a simple but powerful method that she called prayer in action. First, she taught people to identify a real need in the community. Then, she guided them to spend an entire week praying specifically for that situation, asking Our Lady of Fatima to show them what the right path was. Only then would they begin taking practical actions. but always with the certainty that they were following divine guidance, not just human impulses. The result was extraordinary. In 1 year, the prayer in action method had been applied in more than 50 different communities, generating campaigns that collectively raised more than $5 million for the most diverse causes, from school renovations to medical treatment for needy children, including food programs for the elderly and housing projects for homeless families. Meanwhile, Ayana was living through her own transformation. After meeting Maria Elena and Catherine, she had rediscovered not only her Christian faith, but also the ancestral wisdom of her people. She began integrating traditional healing practices with modern medicine, always asking for guidance from Our Lady of Fatima before each treatment. The results were surprising. Patients whom doctors had given up on began showing inexplicable improvements. People with chronic diseases experienced relief that science couldn't explain. Families torn apart by suffering found peace and reconciliation. In the corridors of the hospital where Ayana worked, the young doctor developed a protocol that she called Marian integral medicine, combining conventional medical treatment, ancestral healing practices, and prayer directed to Our Lady of Fatima. She created a small prayer space in the hospital, decorated with images of Our Lady of Fatima and sacred Navajo symbols, where patients and families could find moments of peace and reflection. What most impressed everyone who knew Ayana was her ability to be present in the most difficult moments. She seemed to have a supernatural intuition to know when someone needed special attention. She appeared in the right room, at the right time, with the right word. She spent hours holding the hands of terminal patients, bringing comfort not only to them, but to entire families. It was on one of these occasions that the first documented miracle happened. Ayana was caring for an 8-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez, who had been diagnosed with advanced leukemia. The doctors had given the child only a few weeks to live, and the parents were desperate. Ayana spent 3 consecutive nights in Emma's room, alternating between Catholic prayers and traditional Navajo chants, always with the rosary of Our Lady of Fatima in her hands. On the 3rd night, the girl woke up in the middle of the night and said she had dreamed of a very beautiful lady, dressed in blue and white, who had promised that she would get better. The next day, the test showed something that doctors classified as impossible: spontaneous remission. There was no longer any sign of leukemia in Emma's body. The oncologists couldn't explain what had happened, but Ayana knew. It had been a miracle from Our Lady of Fatima. The news spread rapidly through the hospital, and then through the city. Journalists began seeking out Ayana, wanting to understand how a young Navajo doctor had managed to cure a child with terminal cancer. But Ayana always deflected credit to Our Lady of Fatima, explaining that she was just an instrument in Mary's hands. Emma's case was just the first of many. In the following months, the hospital where Ayana worked became nationally known as a place where miracles happened. People from all over the country began bringing their loved ones there, hoping to find the cure that traditional medicine couldn't offer. Catherine, seeing what was happening, decided to expand her foundation to include the Phoenix Hospital as a reference center in integral medicine. She financed the construction of a new specialized wing, equipped with the most modern medical technology, but also with spaces dedicated to prayer, meditation, and spiritual practices from different traditions. Maria Elena, always with her simple but profound wisdom, suggested they create a training program to teach other people to recognize and develop the 5 roses of Fatima in their own lives. She had realized that there were thousands of women throughout the country who carried these sacred roses without knowing it, and who needed only guidance to become instruments of transformation in their communities. Thus was born the 5 Roses program, an intensive 3-month course where women of all ages and backgrounds learned to identify their specific spiritual gifts and use them in service to others. The program combined teachings about devotion to Our Lady of Fatima, practical techniques for community organization, and spiritual exercises for developing intuition and faith. The first class had only 20 participants, all from the Phoenix area. But the impact was so extraordinary that other cities began asking to host the program. In 2 years, more than 1,500 women had been trained by the 5 Roses program, creating a national network of spiritually empowered women committed to social transformation. Each graduate of the program became a seed of change in her own community. Some created prayer groups that transformed into mutual aid movements. Others developed social assistance projects that grew to become respected organizations. Some discovered vocations for healing and specialized in holistic therapies. Others became community leaders, running for public office to bring Marian values into politics. But perhaps the most beautiful fruit of this entire movement was Emma Rodriguez. The little girl healed of leukemia became a doctor at age 22, specializing in pediatric oncology. She became Ayana's first official disciple. Emma carried the 5 Roses of Fatima so clearly that sick children calmed down just being near her. Emma developed a unique protocol for treating childhood cancer, combining state-of-the-art chemotherapy with intense spiritual support. Her method, integral Marian healing, had a 40% higher remission rate than conventional treatments, and was adopted in hospitals worldwide. 10 years after the first apparition, Maria Elena, Catherine, and Iona reunited in the Phoenix Hospital Chapel for what would become their final mission together. By then, they were recognized globally as the founders of the Five Roses movement of Fátima, but they remained the same humble, dedicated women they had always been. That night, Our Lady appeared to them once more, bringing a final revelation. My beloved daughters, you have fulfilled the mission I entrusted to you perfectly. The Garden of the Five Roses now blooms across every continent, and millions of women carry these sacred seeds in their hearts. It is time for you to pass the torch to the next generation. Our Lady revealed that Emma Rodriguez would become the new principal guardian, responsible for leading the movement for the decades to come. Other young women, trained through the program, would also take on leadership roles in their regions. You will no longer serve as active guardians, the Blessed Mother explained, but as emeritus guardians, advisors and mentors to the new leaders. Your active mission may slow down, but your spiritual importance will only grow, because you have become bridges between heaven and earth, permanent channels of my maternal grace. The vision ended with Our Lady blessing not only the three women, but all the spiritual daughters they had formed over the years. And when the light faded for the final time, they knew, one era had ended, and another was beginning. Today, 15 years after that first encounter, the Five Roses of Fatima movement is active in 127 countries, with over 2 million officially registered women carrying the sacred roses. But the true number is countless, because these roses spread naturally, from heart to heart, without the need for records or formal structures. And you, my dear sister who has made it to the end of this story, you need to know, this was not a coincidence. If these words touched your heart, if you saw yourself in one of the five roses, if you felt an inner calling to become a channel of transformation in the world, it means that Our Lady of Fatima has a special mission for you too. The five sacred roses continue to be planted in the hearts of chosen women. Maybe you are the next to carry them. Maybe you are the woman your community has been waiting for to blossom. Maybe you are the missing seed for Mary's garden to reach your family, your neighbors, your city. Don't be afraid to answer the call. Our Lady of Fatima never abandons her devoted daughters. If you've been chosen to carry one or more of the five sacred roses, she herself will give you all the strength, all the wisdom, and all the grace you need to fulfill your mission. Pray, trust, and act. The world is waiting for your rose to bloom. In the name of Maria Elena, Catherine, Iona, Emma, and all the women who carry the five roses of Fatima in their hearts, Amen.